Alrighty, I'm coming at you again with weird hair. Oh gosh, if I took the time to get my hair ready to do stuff like this, like it would never get done. So here we are. Okay, I am making this video because recently there's two different things I have talked about online that have brought in a lot of questions, which I was excited about. The first was this app that I talked about called Think Dirty. It's an app where you scan household products. Mostly, I think it's actually focused towards beauty products. And you can see kind of how bad they are for you on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being the best and 10 being the worst. There's also another app, I think it's called, what is it called? EWG, is that what it is? My friend Megan told me about that one too, and that one also works. And I got a lot of questions about that regarding chemicals in products and the kind of the effect that has on you. And then about a week later, or maybe just a few days later, I posted about the household cleaner that we use that is plant-based. I'm actually not going to tell you what it was. Those of you who saw my post will know what it is, because I really want you to know that I am not trying to sell things. I'm not trying to get your money. The chemical-free movement is something that both my husband and I are really passionate about right now. I mean, not right now, but passionate about in general. And it's hard when you do distribute for a company that sells good products for people to not think like, oh, you're just posting this because you want me to buy something. And that's just not the case. So I'm not even going to talk about the product I was using, but I talked about how it was effective at germ killing. And I got some questions about that, and so I wanted to make a video to talk about it. And I love research, so this was actually really exciting for me because I learned even more through the questions than I knew before. And so I have a bunch of stuff to read to you, and I hope that you'll find this informative. And I am not trying to make anyone feel bad if they still use chemical products. Like, I hope this will be eye-opening for sure, but there's no like judgment or condemnation. This is what we've decided is best for our family, and I do think that there is scientific evidence that backs up what I'm saying. But I know that like for me, I had to like experience a lot of different things to make this decision, and I think like forcing people into it is just not okay. So anyway, that being said, the first question I wanted to address was about 3 kind of more serious bacteria that someone was questioning whether or not this product I was talking about could kill. What I first want to talk about is those specific bacteria and kind of the prevalence of them so that we can get like a little bit of a baseline. The 3 infections we're talking about here are infections from E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria. Okay, so before we talk about whether or not plant-based products and oils can kill that bacteria, let's just talk about the prevalence in general. So, okay, I didn't know this before, but this is really interesting. So from 1982 to 2002, so 20-year time span, there were a total of 350 outbreaks reported from 49 states. And so within those 350 outbreaks, there were 8,598 cases of E. coli. And that's in a span of 20 years, okay? Out of those 8,598 infections from E. coli, only 5 of them, 5, were from individual residences. So like someone got infected from E. coli that was found in their house. 5, only 5, okay? So the majority of the outbreaks of E. coli actually had to do with direct food consumption. So eating something directly, putting it into your mouth that was infected with E. coli. And that made up 52% of the outbreaks. So we won't focus on the other statistics about where people were getting these from. There were, daycares were really big, but the important thing to note is that it was almost impossible to get infected by E. coli in your house. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say. Second, salmonella. Okay, there are approximately 13.6 cases of salmonella infections per 100,000 people in a year. Okay, here is another statistic that surprised me. 87% of all of those outbreaks were caused, once again, by direct food consumption. And then 10%, so that was 87%. 10% of outbreaks were caused by person-to-person contact. 3% were caused by pets. I couldn't even find information about like salmonella being left on a hard surface and then someone contracting it that way, because it was very, 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 very unlikely to happen. Okay, and then let's talk about listeria. I'm going to just read this to you. Except for the transmission of mother to fetus, human-to-human infection is caused almost exclusively by the ingestion of the bacteria. So once again, most listeria outbreaks come from directly consuming something that has listeria, and that's why they say that pregnant women have to be extra careful because their immune systems are compromised, which is a very interesting fact we'll talk about in a minute. In an otherwise healthy person, an extremely large amount of listeria bacteria must be ingested to cause illness, estimated to be somewhere between 10 to 100 million viable bacteria, and that's in a healthy individual. Even with such a dose, okay, so even with such a high dose of bacteria that a healthy individual consumes or has in their body, they would only suffer from fever, diarrhea, or other gastrointestinal symptoms, so cramping, pain, stuff like that. So it wasn't even anything serious. Okay, but then there wasn't even enough listeria on the surface. Like let's say, okay, it would be rare to go to the store and find raw chicken with listeria in it if you're buying good quality stuff. You come home, let's say you cut it directly on your countertop, and then you didn't clean it with anything. Okay, let's say you just have literally some listeria juice in the juices on your countertop, which is disgusting. Even if you licked your countertop, which I don't think many people are doing, I mean, if you lick your countertops, listen, you do you, but there wouldn't have been enough listeria to cause an infection. So your immune system does such a good job at keeping your body healthy that you don't actually need, like, forget talking about oils or whatever. You don't actually need to pull out your harsh chemicals like Clorox anyway, because the likelihood of you suffering from it is slim to none. Okay, here is the next topic I want to talk about. So a lot of the questions that I got had to do with like, okay, on just like a side-by-side comparison, how well do essential oils do at killing germs versus Clorox or heavy, harsh chemical cleaners? Well, it's really not a fair thing to talk about because you're not just talking about how well they kill germs. You also have to talk about the other factors involved with using each of the products. So obviously you probably know that when you're using pure essential oils or plant-based products that truly are clean, not just like marketed as being natural, the ones that truly are natural, there are going to be no other side effects. So whether or not it kills 100% of the germs, you're not going to have any other issues going on. And even if it didn't kill 100% of the germs, which we will talk about that later, the likelihood of you getting sick from anything that was left over is slim to none, so which we've already talked a little bit about. So let's talk about then some of the potential consequences of using chemicals long term. These were the statistics that I was really surprised about because they're pretty intense. So I'm just going to read them to you. Okay, fact number one about chemicals. 150 chemicals that are found in most homes are connected to allergies, birth defects, cancer, and psychological disorders. The leading cause of poisoning in the home for children under the age of 6 is liquid dish soap. So obviously liquid dish soap that is laden with chemicals. Of the chemicals found in personal care products, 884 are toxic, 146 cause tumors, 218 cause reproductive complications, 778 cause acute toxicity, 314 cause biological mutations, 376 cause skin and eye irritations. Those are talking about the chemicals themselves, what they're linked to. Okay, the number 4, household chlorine bleach, which claim to disinfect, are classified as pesticides under the Federal Hazardous Substances Act. That was really interesting to me. So it's actually a pesticide that we're using to clean our countertops, floors, bathrooms, and we think that we're protecting ourselves against all this other bacteria, but even serious bacteria is usually not even found in our homes, at least bacteria that our bodies can't fight off on our own, or that like just soap and water or hydrogen peroxide vinegar can't take care of. As more toxic chemicals have been introduced to our environment in greater amounts over the last 20 to 30 years, the level of toxins stored inside of our fat cells have risen. So one study showed that 100% of the people tested, there was a chemical found in their fat cells, in 100% of the people being tested, that is found in most household deodorizers and room fresheners. And a lot of those chemicals are staying in our fat cells forever, which leads to other problems that we'll talk about in a minute. Asthma was once a very rare disease. Now the condition is extremely common. The asthma rate has tripled in the last 20 years, and nearly 30 million Americans are currently afflicted. Asthma death in children and young people, so this is death from asthma, has increased by a dramatic 118% just between 1980 and 1993. All right, this was the next statistic that I'm going to share is the one that really affected me because I'm a stay-at-home mama. I know a lot of my friends are too. And this was just crazy to me. So this statistic is from a 17-year study done, and it concluded that women who work in the home have a 54% higher death rate from cancer than women who worked outside of the home. And the reason was because of daily use of chemical cleaners. Isn't that crazy? 54% more women died from cancer than those who work outside of the home. Okay, so the next thing I want to say is that on a larger scale, and I'm gonna sound like a total hippie, and that's fine, but on a larger scale, it's not just about what percentage of germs are they gonna kill. We also have to talk about what effect is the chemical gonna have on my body versus what effect is the, essential oil gonna have on my body and the natural product gonna have on my body. But also, what effect are chemicals having on the environment? So there were all these studies I found that talked about how harmful of an impact all these chemicals we're using are having on the environment. Specifically, dioxins, which are released every time you open a bottle of bleach, they were responsible for the decimation of the bald eagle population during the mid-20th century. They continue to reduce the number of fish and bird species near the Great Lakes. The World Wildlife Fund also warns that chlorine byproducts can cause mutations, extinction, and they can cause wildlife to become sterile. One of the last things I want to talk about, specifically with bleach, is that, so a lot of people will say like, oh, I've been using bleach for years and, maybe I'll get like a mild headache when I'm cleaning, but that's about it. And this is an interesting phenomenon to me that happens, not just with chemicals, but with anything that's regarded as being unhealthy. People will often say, well, I'm fine, like, I'm not dead, which I think is silly because you might have these external symptoms that like happen, like a headache, and then it goes away. But the internal effect is something that you can't see. So they have done all these studies. So they were saying that even low levels of these chemicals released into the air, released into the water, do accumulate over time, and they lead to long-term health concerns like asthma, or worse, cancer, psychological disorders, reproductive issues, and more. Okay, so let's go all the way back around to the beginning when we talked about those 3 bacteria that we actually don't need to worry as much about in our homes. But the original question was, could essential oils kill that bacteria? And the good news is, yes! Okay, so I found multiple studies on this, but I wanted to be very careful not to cite a study that was linked to any sort of essential oil company, any person that, you know, is a distributor for an essential oil company. So there was a publication of the Institute of Food Technologists in the Journal of Food Science that was researching the effectiveness of different kinds of oils on Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria. The oils that they tested were garlic, cinnamon oil, and clove oil. And if you know anything about this specific product that I was talking about, cinnamon oil and clove oil are 2 of the ingredients in it. And they found that cinnamon, clove, and garlic oils were effective in completely killing E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria. Actually, Salmonella was the weakest when it came to fighting the oils, but all 3 of them were wiped out by these oils. So that being said, the reason I didn't want to just come out and say, hey, look, I found these studies where, you know, where these oils are proven to kill these things, I wanted to look at, like, well, why do we need to know that? Like, are these bacteria even prevalent in our homes? Like, do we even need to be concerned that we have these monster bacteria that are going to make us really sick in our homes at all? And the answer that I found was no. Like, we're dealing with relatively easy to battle germs in our homes most of the time. Now, if you have turned your home into a refugee center for people infected with E. coli, girl, you use your bleach. But the fact of the matter is, most of us don't have high enough amounts of these bacteria in our homes at all, like on our counters, in our bathrooms, on our floor, to garner the use of harsh chemicals. I hope this helps, and I'm sure I'll have another video soon. I'm on a video roll. What am I doing? I don't know. I'll talk to you guys later.